The cold wind of King's Landing always felt fake to Ned Stark. It had none of the honor or truth of Winterfell's snow. Here, every breeze whispered lies, and every smile masked a blade. But Ned was done pretending. He had found the truth. The truth that Cersei Lannister's children were not Robert's, not even close. They were born of incest, fathered by her brother Jaime. And the throne was a lie. He sat at his desk late into the night, Maester Pycelle having just left his chambers with suspicion dancing in his eyes. Ned dipped his quill into ink and began to write the one letter he knew could end a kingdom, or save it. Robert, you have been my brother in all but blood. What I am about to tell you may break your heart, but it is the truth. Ned didn't mince words. He told the king everything. From Jon Arryn's death and his whispered, "The seed is strong," to the investigation that led him through black-haired bastards and children with golden curls. The timeline made sense. The evidence was solid. And Robert had to know. When the letter was sealed with the direwolf sigil, Ned called on Varys. "I know you slither in shadows," he said grimly as the eunuch stepped out from behind the curtain. "But this message must reach the king tonight, wherever he is whoring or drinking." Varys gave a nod, more solemn than usual. "This truth, it will not be received lightly." "I'm counting on that," Ned said, "because I fear if I wait even a day longer, I won't live long enough to say it out loud." The next morning, the Red Keep didn't wake to sunlight. It woke to roaring. Robert Baratheon had returned from a week-long hunt, his face red with wine, dust, and now fury. "They lied to me," he shouted, smashing his goblet against the wall. "All of them." Ned stood quietly before him in the solar Ser Barristan, standing just behind. "I trusted her," Robert said. "I gave her everything, a crown, a kingdom, my name." "You gave her a prison, Your Grace," Ned said carefully. "She built her freedom in another man's bed." Robert's hand trembled with rage. "Jaime, the Kingslayer, my sworn brother. I'll cut his head off with the same sword he used to kill the Mad King." "And what of her?" Ned asked. "And the children?" The silence was bitter. "My heir." Robert's voice cracked. "Joffrey is not my son." "No," Ned confirmed. "None of them are." Robert paced like a wounded bear. "Then who wears the crown, Ned? Who follows me when I die?" Ned hesitated. "Stannis. He is your true heir." Robert scoffed. "Stannis is a cold, rigid, humorless stone. But he is mine, I suppose." At that moment, Robert made the decision that would shake the realm. He ordered the gold cloaks to bring Cersei and her children under arrest. Jaime was to be captured alive or dead. And Ned Stark, his most loyal friend, was named protector of the realm until Stannis arrived from Dragonstone. But what no one saw coming was the lioness's bite. Cersei had spies everywhere. She knew Robert's mood before the sun even rose. By the time the gold cloaks reached the royal chambers, the Queen and her children were gone, disappeared from the Red Keep like smoke. Jaime, too. Ned stood by the window of the Tower of the Hand, watching the gates as chaos swirled below. The city was boiling over. News had already begun to spread. The Queen has fled. The King is betrayed. War is coming. Ned felt the weight of the letter all over again. He had done the right thing, the honorable thing, but in King's Landing, honor was the most dangerous weapon you could carry. He turned just as a messenger burst through the doors. "They've taken the sept, Lord Stark. Queen Cersei's loyal guards seized it. They're holding the High Septon hostage and proclaiming Joffrey as king." Ned's stomach sank. The letter had been sent. The truth had been told. And now the war for the Iron Throne had begun. The sun hadn't risen properly, and yet the city was already on fire, not with flame, but with fear. Cersei Lannister had moved swiftly, more swiftly than Ned ever imagined. While the king still reeled from the truth, she had unleashed a quiet rebellion from within the Red Keep. Gold cloaks loyal to House Lannister turned their cloaks inside out. Varys vanished. Littlefinger, ever the opportunist, was nowhere to be found, and the sept of Baelor now rang with the false coronation of a false king. Ned stood in the war room with Sir Barristan Selmy, Renly Baratheon, and a half-circle of uneasy lords. Robert sat hunched at the head of the table, one hand nursing his head, the other gripping a goblet of strong wine. His eyes were bloodshot, but his rage had cooled into something more dangerous, clarity. "I should have had her killed years ago," Robert said bitterly, "the moment she opened her mouth at our wedding. But no, I was too drunk and too damn tired to care." "She has the sept, Your Grace," Sir Barristan said, "and the city watch is splitting by the hour. Half wear your stag, the other half hide lions under their armor." "She's turned my own damn city against me," Robert growled. "And for what? To keep that little bastard boy on my throne." "Your Grace," Ned said carefully, "you must act fast. Send for Stannis. If you give him the authority, he can land with men and take the capital from the east before Tywin moves." Robert narrowed his eyes. Stannis, cold, loyal bastard. He'd burn the city to save it. "But he'll save the kingdom," Ned said. "That's what matters." Renly slammed his hand on the table. "Or you could name me instead. I'm in the city already. I have men. The people like me." Robert sneered. "You're a child playing at court. You don't have the spine for war." "And Stannis doesn't have the heart," Renly snapped back. "You want a king, Robert? Choose one who can rule without burning everything to ash." Ned stepped in between the two brothers. "This is not the time for pride. The Queen has declared war. Joffrey sits on the throne with a crown he has no right to. If we don't move now, Tywin Lannister will bring his armies down the King's Road, and there'll be no throne left to fight for." Robert's silence filled the room like smoke. Finally, he looked at Ned. "Send ravens to Stannis, to the Vale, to Riverrun, and God's help me, even to the north." Ned nodded. "But don't crown Stannis yet," Robert added. "I want to see the look on Cersei's face when I drag her from that throne and put her in chains." The message went out, but Cersei was already ahead. That night, Ned received word that Grand Maester Pycelle had been poisoned in his chambers. Another note claimed that Lancel Lannister had been spotted slipping in and out of the Tower of the Hand. Servants whispered that Cersei had offered a bounty for Ned Stark's head, alive or dead. "You should leave, my lord," Sir Barristan advised. "Take your daughters and ride for Winterfell." "No," Ned said. "If I run now, I prove her right. I won't abandon Robert, not again." Meanwhile, Robert was growing weaker by the day. The wine never left his hand. Some whispered that his hunting wound, reopened days ago, hadn't healed right. He was coughing blood. And though the king barked orders, the power was slowly slipping from his fingers. Cersei knew it. So did Joffrey. From the Sept's high balcony, the boy king began issuing edicts. Loyal traitors would be rewarded. Lord Eddard Stark was declared a criminal for forging claims against the royal bloodline. Men began to vanish in the night. Gold cloaks loyal to Ned were found stabbed in alleys. The stench of war was no longer in the distance. It was now inside the castle. Ned wrote a final raven to Stannis. "Come with fire and fury. Come for your brother's throne. Come before the lion devours us all." But even as he sealed it, he wondered, would Stannis be savior or butcher? And then came the news that would change everything. A whisper from a stable boy, half dead from a knife wound. "The Queen, she's not running anymore. She's waiting. Tywin is marching south, and the boy has named himself king in Robert's place." It wasn't just treason, it was war. 3 days later, Robert Baratheon died. Not from a wound, not in battle, but alone in his chambers, choking on his own blood, poisoned by the very wine he had drowned himself in for years. Some said it was his liver. Others claimed Cersei had someone slip something bitter into his last bottle. But whatever the truth, by the time dawn broke, the king was dead, and chaos finally took the throne. Ned Stark stood over Robert's body with a heart too heavy to carry. The man he had called brother, fought beside in rebellion and defended with his life, had been undone not by swords or spears, but by secrets, lies, and his own blind rage. His crown now rested on no man's brow, and yet 3 claimed it. Cersei moved first. Before Ned could even summon the council, the Queen declared Joffrey Baratheon the true heir. She took the Iron Throne with him, sitting stiffly beside her, golden curls gleaming like victory. The bells rang, not in mourning, but for a coronation built on treason. At the same time, Ned's letter reached Stannis at Dragonstone. The Lord of Light's fires burned brighter that night. Stannis sent back a raven with only one line: "The false queen and her bastard children will burn." He declared himself king by blood and right, refusing to recognize Joffrey and calling Cersei the whore of incest. He began preparations for war, gathering ships, banners, and steel, but he would not move without force. He needed the realm to split before he struck, and it did. Renly Baratheon, bold and reckless, declared himself king in the south, claiming the people would never follow Stannis's cold heart. Backed by House Tyrell, Renly had banners, wealth, and charisma. What he lacked in claim, he made up for in charm and armies. 3 kings, 1 throne. And in the middle of it all, Ned Stark. The city turned on him like wolves in a cage. On the day Robert's body was to be laid to rest, Cersei struck. She ordered Ned's arrest, accusing him of treason and conspiracy against the crown. Dozens of Lannister guards stormed the Tower of the Hand at sunrise. But Ned had prepared. When they came, they met stark steel. The Northern Guards, still loyal and trained, fought tooth and nail. Hallways ran with blood. Swords clanged like bells. Arya was spirited away by Syrio Forel. Sansa was caught and dragged to the Queen, a hostage for Joffrey's throne. Ned, wounded but alive, escaped through the back tunnels of the keep with Ser Barristan and a handful of loyal men. The only thing that saved him was the loyalty of the small folk who remembered Jon Arryn and his quiet honor. They whispered safe passages. They opened back doors. They bought him hours, and that was all he needed. He made it to the harbor. Varys, pale and quiet, waited in the shadows with a single boat and a grim face. "This is not mercy," Varys said softly. "This is survival." Ned looked back at the Red Keep, its towers sharp against the sky. "She has my daughter." Varys gave a slow nod. "Then take your sword, Lord Stark, and come back with fire." By the time Ned reached the Riverlands, the war had already begun. The bannermen of the North were rallying. The Vale had declared neutrality, but rumors said Lysa Arryn might send forces if Sansa's safety was guaranteed. The Riverlands were burning. Tywin Lannister had sent Gregor Clegane on a brutal campaign to punish the Tullys for their support of Ned. And Robb Stark, just 17, was marching south with 20,000 Northerners behind him. Ned rode fast to meet them. When he arrived in the camp outside Moat Cailin, he saw his son, no longer a boy but a lord grown too quickly. Grey Wind snarled beside him. Catelyn stood like iron beside her son. And when Ned dismounted, they ran to him, not just as kin, but as a family who had been torn and broken, now reforged by war. "I failed him," Ned said, his voice cracking as he knelt before them. "I failed Robert, but I won't fail this war." Robb helped him stand. "Then we ride south, we break the Lannisters, we take back our sister, and we end this lie." Ned looked out toward the horizon. 3 kings, 1 throne, and a war that would tear Westeros apart. But for the first time, he wasn't alone. He had the North, and the North remembers. The Northern army moved like a storm. 20,000 soldiers, bannermen from every corner of the North, marched under House Stark's banner. The direwolf flew high, and behind it rode the man who was supposed to die in King's Landing, Lord Eddard Stark, alive, wounded, but fueled by loss and vengeance. Beside him rode his son, Robb, who had gone from a boy in Winterfell to a general commanding thousands. The Riverlands welcomed them as saviours. Lord Hoster Tully had taken ill, but Catelyn's brother Edmure gathered what forces he could. They joined with the Starks, and together they moved through ravaged villages, burnt fields and bloodied farms, all gifts left behind by Sir Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, under Tywin Lannister's orders. But they didn't just want to fight battles, they wanted to win a war. At the twins, Walder Frey paused. He smelled opportunity and survival. Ned, knowing honour alone would not sway the old weasel, struck a deal. One of Robb's future daughters would be pledged to House Frey. In return, the Northern Army crossed the Green Fork unopposed. Every step closer to King's Landing made the truth louder. The war had truly begun. Back in the capital, Cersei had declared martial law. Streets were patrolled by gold cloaks, but half were spies, and the rest had no loyalty but coin. Joffrey now sat fully on the Iron Throne, dressed in robes too big for his childish frame, speaking words fed to him by the Queen. The court clapped, the lords bowed, and behind their eyes burned hatred. Littlefinger had returned, now one of the most powerful voices on the small council. He whispered of alliances, of coin, of betrayal. Varys said little. Grand Maester Pycelle was dead, replaced by one of Qyburn's early sympathizers, someone more loyal to Cersei than to truth. Sansa Stark remained a prisoner, her presence used to bait Ned back. She was forced to write letters to her brother, begging him to bend the knee. She wrote them, but the tears on the parchment made her pain clear. But the letter never reached Robb. The Raven was intercepted by one of Catelyn's spies, who handed it to Ned. He read the false words carefully. "Father betrayed the realm. The king is just. Robb, lay down your swords." He burned it in silence. "They have her," he said, voice hoarse, "and they're using her to break us." Catelyn placed a hand on his. "They'll never break the North, and they'll never keep our daughter." In the west, Tywin Lannister finally made his move. With Jaime commanding one wing of the army and Sir Gregor the other, Tywin meant to crush the Riverlands and isolate the north. But he underestimated the fire that had been lit inside Ned Stark. At the Battle of the Whispering Wood, Jaime's army was ambushed. Grey wind tore through men like parchment. Robb led the charge himself, cutting down knights twice his age. When the dust cleared, the Kingslayer was captured, bound in chains, and brought to Lord Eddard Stark. Jaime, bloodied but grinning, looked up at Ned. "You finally grew a spine, Stark." Ned knelt and looked him in the eye. "You laid with your sister. You gave her bastards who now sit on the throne. You murdered honor. And you think you've brought it back?" Jaime smirked. "You'll burn just like the rest of us." Robb raised his sword, but Ned placed a hand on his shoulder. "He lives, for now. He'll be more useful breathing than bleeding." And so Jaime was sent to Riverrun as a hostage, while Tywin Lannister raged and regrouped. But across the sea, a storm was brewing too. The Raven from Westeros had reached Dragonstone. Stannis Baratheon, now crowned in his own hall, prepared his ships. Beside him stood a woman cloaked in red, whispering of gods and flames, of rightful kings and false queens. Her name was Melisandre. "The usurper's son sits where he should not," she said, voice like silk and fire. "The wolf rises. The lion roars. But only the fire will cleanse the realm." Stannis was unmoved by prophecy, but he believed in law and in himself. His brother had died, his nephew was a lie, and the North had risen. He gathered his ships, his men, his fury. Soon King's Landing would face fire from the sea, steel from the north, and justice from all sides. In the Stark camp, as ravens Flue and swords sharpened, Ned sat alone with Catelyn in a quiet tent. "I never wanted this," he said. "All I wanted was to keep them safe." Catelyn leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then let's finish this, for them, for our children." Ned looked at the war map, at the looming red of Lannister banners around King's Landing. "Then we take the capital," he said. "We rip out the root, and we make sure this war ends the way it should have ended 16 years ago." The march on King's Landing was like nothing the realm had seen since Robert's rebellion. The northern host, hardened by weeks of blood and fire, swept south with terrifying purpose, with Jaime Lannister in chains and Tywin retreating west. To regroup, Cersei's grip on the capital began to loosen. Fear leaked from the city's gates like sewage. Inside the Red Keep, every lord asked the same question: how long until the wolf gets in? Cersei still wore her confidence like armor. She stood behind her son's throne, hands clenched behind her back, speaking for Joffrey before he could open his cruel little mouth. Sansa Stark, pale and thinner now, stood beside the Queen, used like a prop, proof of their power over House Stark. But even the Lannister bannermen had grown restless. The gold was drying up, and so was their patience. Then came the news that shattered whatever illusions Cersei had left. Stannis Baratheon's fleet had landed at Blackwater Bay. The attack came in the dead of night. Cersei, expecting a siege, instead faced an invasion. Stannis brought more than men. He brought fire, flaming pitch, siege towers, and the burning faith of the Lord of Light. The Blackwater defences cracked under pressure. The City Watch, half-bribed by Littlefinger and sick of Lannister rule, opened the gates from the inside. The city was no longer loyal, it was just scared. Ned Stark's forces struck at sunrise. The north poured in from the King's Road. The south, what remained of Renly's old banners, joined Stannis near the Mudgate. The capital was surrounded. Cersei fled to Maegor's Holdfast with Joffrey and Sansa, guarded by the few men who still followed her out of fear rather than loyalty. The rest of the Red Keep turned into a battleground. Sir Barristan Selmy, dismissed by Joffrey weeks ago, returned to the fight, leading a group of loyalists through the halls of the keep like a ghost of the Old Kingdom. And through the madness rode Eddard Stark. His cloak was torn. His sword, ice, was stained from too many wars, but his eyes were alive with purpose. They stormed the throne room by midday. Joffrey was dragged from the Iron Throne by his own guards. Cersei shrieked like a cornered animal, but there were no lions left to defend her. Sir Meryn Trant died in the hallway trying to resist. The Hound, tired of the madness, laid down his sword and walked away, vanishing into the city smoke. Ned reached Sansa first. She ran to him like a child, clutching him, sobbing into his chest. "I thought I'd never see you again," she whispered. "You're safe now," he said, trying to believe it himself. "I promise you, Sansa, it's over." But it wasn't. The final act was justice. Stannis Baratheon entered the throne room beside Ned and Ser Davos. He did not smile. He simply stared at the Iron Throne and said, "This seat is mine by law and by right. I do not need your approval." Ned looked him dead in the eye. "Then prove it. Rule better than your brother. Better than the Lion. Or we'll be right. Back here in 10 years. Stannis nodded and sat. Cersei and Joffrey were tried days later. The realm watched as the Queen was found guilty of treason, incest, and the murder of a king. Her children's legitimacy was shattered. Joffrey, crying and screaming, was dragged to the Sept of Baelor. Stannis, cold as winter, gave the order. Joffrey's head rolled, and with it the lie that nearly destroyed Westeros. Cersei followed, spitting curses, even as the blade took her. The war was over. The Iron Throne now bore a king who cared nothing for songs or smiles. Stannis ruled with justice, not mercy. The Lannisters were broken. Tywin retreated to Casterly Rock, humiliated, his legacy in ruins. Renly was dead, poisoned under mysterious circumstances before he could regroup. The Reach bowed. The Stormlands, swore fealty, and Ned Stark, he did not return to Winterfell. He remained as Hand of the King, not for power, but because he knew what happened when wolves turned their backs on thrones. He wrote to Robb, who returned north as Warden. Arya was found on the docks weeks later, wild but alive. Bran ruled in Winterfell. Rickon laughed again. Sansa healed slowly, but they were together, not untouched by war but unbroken. As Ned walked the halls of the Red Keep one morning, he paused by the empty throne. He remembered Robert. He remembered Jon Arryn. He remembered how close it all came to burning. Then he turned and walked away, because this time the truth had come in time, and the wolf had not bowed.